This is Sean O'Malley, and you're watching Full Time MMA. Don't be a bagel biting, bagel bitch boy, bagel bitch back.
Back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
And the UFC 230 drama continues. Nate Diaz has implied he's belling on UFC 230 because Dustin Poirier doesn't want to fight at 165 pounds. Now, this is of course already going along with the UFC 230 main event drama. We don't know what the main event's gonna be. There's been speculation of Jon Jones, there's been speculations of Alexander Gustafsson, Yoel Romero, all sort of even Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley. I mean, all sort of speculations as to what's going to be the main event for UFC 230. And as of right now, there's not one. But one of the most recent possibilities was even Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier for the 165-pound title. Both fighters took to Twitter yesterday and announced that they would be fighting for the 165-pound title, although that was later disputed by the UFC. So this UFC 230 card is a debacle right now. Holy smokes! Nobody. I mean, by the deadline of UFC 230, we could have a completely different card than we expected. It could be way better than we expected by now. I mean, it's insane. The tickets went on sale yesterday, and those UFC 230 tickets are almost like fucking lottery tickets at this point, because it could either be you're going to see Gustafsson versus Romero for an interim title, or you could, and that's with no Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier if Nate Diaz fucks around and bells on the card, or you could go see Diaz versus Poirier and like Jones versus Gustafsson all on the same card. So it's gonna be crazy, but I think that we'll get a good main event, and hopefully Nate Diaz will stay on this card as well, because it is Madison Square Garden. It is a huge card, and that would be, like I said earlier, that would be just a debacle if this card fell apart all the way. You know what I'm saying? It would really be a travesty, honestly. I mean, if you just think about the potential this card had in Madison Square Garden, we could have had the return of Jon Jones, which makes all the sense in the world right now. He's from New York. He's never fought there yet. Got cleared by USADA just in time to fight at Madison Square Garden. But now, for all we know, he won't be there. So I'll keep you guys updated on that situation. But all of that UFC 230 drama kind of leads up to where we're at right now. And Nate Diaz is implying he's belling on UFC 230. Now, Nate Diaz says, what about me and Nate for the 165-pound title? And then later on, a few days later, Nate Diaz says, I'm happy to announce that I'm bringing in a new weight division in the UFC. I'll be fighting the main event November 3rd, New York City, against Dustin Poirier for the first ever 165-pound super fighter division. I'm happy to be a part of history. And Dustin Poirier also on the same day, right after that, announced it as well. He was like, yo, we're fighting for the 165-pound title. It's an honor to bring in this division. So they both were under the impression they're fighting for the title. Now, fast forward to today. Nate Diaz says the UFC just told me Dustin doesn't want to fight at 165 pounds. So I'll be back next year, which means he's pulling out of the fight if he actually goes through with it. Now, it's not official, you know what I'm saying? He hasn't officially pulled out, and I'm going to hope he stays on, because for one, he hasn't fought in over 2 years, and for two, he also kind of pulled this move already once. If you recall, he got pissed off at the press conference at the UFC's 25th anniversary press conference. Nate Diaz, Dustin Poirier, and a lot of other fighters were there, but at the end, they announced McGregor versus Khabib. So in the middle of that announcement, Nate Diaz got up, walked off stage. He was pissed off, said the UFC needs to start over promoting instead of under promoting, and he don't even know if he's gonna fight now. And it seemed like cooler heads prevailed. He was still on the card, but now here we are again. I'll be back next year. So hopefully that's not what happens, and Dustin Poirier kind of let Nate Diaz know that's not the case. He took to Twitter and said, hold that noise, I'm 100% down. And for sure, I believe Dustin Poirier is down to fight at this division. For one, it's a huge fight in Nate Diaz. For two, you're fighting for a belt now. You were just going to be fighting Nate Diaz at 155. Now you cut 10 less pounds, you're fighting the same guy, and you're fighting for a belt. That makes no sense. Dustin Poirier would say no. And that's one other thing. It seems like there's a whole lot of miscommunication going on right about now in the UFC. You got Dana White on one hand saying there's no truth whatsoever to 165-pound division. Then you got Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier announcing it like they got word from the UFC. It ain't like they were fucking talking to each other like, what's up? You know, they're about to be fighting each other. They're not fucking phoning each other. Hey, what's up, man? Let's make a power play and say we're fighting for this 165-pound division even though we're not. Somebody made them under the impression that they were going to be fighting for that belt. So they announced it. And with that being said, this further confirms somebody in the UFC is talking about this 165-pound division. Because he said the UFC just told me Dustin doesn't want to fight at 165. So someone in the UFC is talking about Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier at 165, regardless of what Dana or whoever said that there's no truth to that. So there's a whole lot going on. But man, UFC 230 could potentially be one of the greatest cards of the year. Or it could fuck around and be lackluster if Nate Diaz actually pulls off. We don't get John Jones on the card. Like, I mean, it's crazy where we're at right now with UFC 230. But with that being said, it's kind of fun. And we got a lot of good fights regardless, even on this card. I mean, even before this, tomorrow we've got Gegard Mousasi, Rory McDonald, champ versus champ. I mean, Bellator 206 is insanely stacked. Next weekend after that, we got McGregor versus Khabib coming up. And this is just the pay-per-view after that, you know, and it's still stacked. Weidman versus Rocco 2, Adesanya versus Brunson. You got fucking Branch versus Jacare. I mean, Madison Square Garden is stacked regardless. But as far as the main event and co-main event are concerned, it can go either really decent or really good. So I'm gonna cross my fingers, man. With that being said, it is what it is. Let the Full Time family know what you think in the comments.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOWG.